when March from DIA approached me, what is it, 3-4 months ago, and asked if I wanted to come here and give a presentation, I think the wish was that when you visit trade shows all over the world, you see a lot of technology, you talk to a lot of different people, and I thought that's interesting enough, but there's so many great trade media that covers the product side of it. So I thought that it could be interesting to maybe look into something a little bit broader and maybe also try to put things a little bit in perspective. So unfortunately, that means that today's agenda will be very busy. So I hope you understand my English, and there will be a chance for Q&As also after things, but if people have questions during the presentation, just raise your hand and let's get going, because it's interesting times that we are in. I wanted to call it Headlines, Secrets and Realities. And the reason why I want to do that is because sometimes there are things going on a little bit below the surface that I still think is interesting. And that is, and I was so happy that I picked that name, because I could never have known what is happening in the US right now. And that has something to do a little bit. So I took this screenshot a few days ago because there's a couple of things that I think also applies a little bit to how we work with each other and how we treat each other. You can see the Wall Street Journal, you can see that that was when it was in red. That is like one headline that I think a lot of people have paid attention to because it's a very global thing. And then I also marked the one where Musk is bullying very high-ranking, I think he's from some university. I don't care so much about who it is and what he did. But I think in a time where we have so many differences to discuss, I think that the most important thing is freedom of speech. I think the most important thing is that we talk nicely to each other. And I think we allow too much that even people on high levels in the world, if this becomes the normal, I think it will be way more difficult to communicate and move forward. And that is regardless of what political views you have. I just think it's important to put in perspective. And then you can say that, okay, when I decided to let's say, put a circle around these two topics, I really think that this was that paid more attention to me, because that was actually quite interesting that you can have 55% savings on Stay America. And you can think that is maybe, why do I put this on a screen like this? And that is because I have not been able to find this 55% discounts anywhere. So does that mean that we can just market any shit we want in the world, that any saying to anybody, and then apparently people click on this one and see if it works? And I think that is in our industry where we are exposed to a lot of people that wants to sell us things. And we try to be the, let's say, the unbiased voice that is sometimes trying to look a little bit through some of the headlines. And this, I thought it was a fantastic example. The other thing that was also on the page, this was from Fox News just 2 days ago as well. And that was the question about, will another country drop all tariffs on US products by June 30? And the reason why I think this is quite interesting, there was a headline in Europe saying that Trump wants us to buy oil from America. And I was just like, I mean, I don't know here in Canada, but I don't think it's the government that buys oil, right? It's companies that buy oil, right? So I think that whatever tariff you have and whatever when you lift an embargo or lift whatever you have, it is companies that make those decisions. So for example, as a Dane, I don't want to buy oil from a country that doesn't support the Paris Treaty, for example, right? If I should decide for myself, especially since the prices are based on, let's say, international pricing terms. So the prices on a barrel of oil would be the same whether I buy it from the US or from Canada or from elsewhere. So these kind of things doesn't make sense, but they have a huge influence, because when we as normal human beings and as businesses look at these kind of polls and have these kind of things, I actually think that it is very disturbing because it clutters the understanding. And if we believe in free speech, and if we believe in democracy, and we believe in the very essence of Dan, you cannot ask questions. I think it's very important that we can have those discussions and have some kind of enlightened information about what's going on in the world. And that also applies to the printing industry. And before moving on to something that is maybe more interesting, I don't know what you think, but this is the Wall Street Journal. This is something called the Journalistic Manifesto. Because also in the world is unfortunately part of all these, let's say, cluttering of information. We are also exposed to a lot of terms like fake news and all these things that we have got. As long as we happen to be in a situation that if the people in power don't like what they read, it's fake news. But here is an example. Wall Street Journal is, I would say, probably seen as a conservative media. But they actually have a manifesto where they're describing the journalistic integrity and how they actually dig into stories. And if you ever doubt the media that you're reading, look for the manifesto and see if they have one. And you will be surprised how many media today that doesn't have a manifesto that describes how the working processes are. And just to make a list of some of the things that we're talking about here, that I think influences our industry a lot now. And it is not on purpose that fake news is number one, but just to put it in order. Fake news, sustainability, the new global order, that is something that will influence also the industry a lot. Is print dead? I actually hate that expression, but it is said not only by influencers and people. I got a mail from. I would say that I have never thought about this. I got a mail from a company in South Africa. They were in the process of buying a Ricoh VC80,000 inkjet printer, which is a relatively big investment. And the reason why I mention this is because the banks of South Africa that were supposed to help them financing it, they read only the headlines. So when they were looking into whether they could help them financing, but they said, but print is dying, right? It is not something that is really valid. So when we, even in our own industry, raises those questions, it influences more people, more decision processes, more things that can also have play a big role when it comes to something like the financing of equipment, just as an example. Bankruptcies, we see them. A recent one, I will come a little bit back on that as well, is Hycon from Israel. Been around for many years. They closed last week. They still spoke to Shlomo. They're still trying to see if they can get it reorganized and get it up and running again. I hope that because there are many customers that will be in jeopardy in case they can't get it. The threat of a recession, I think that even with a 90 days delay of tariffs, I don't think that can just say that there's no chance of a recession. Lack of labor is a constant. Wherever we come, we just hear that everybody has these kind of challenges. Wars, we have covered the war in Ukraine. I was only 6 kilometers away from the Russian military zone this summer. I will talk about that in a moment as well. Then new technology is as much as a gift, as much as a threat it is as well, because we are in a paradigm shift right now. We have difficulties attracting young talent. What about inflation? I think that, as I said to my filmer Chica, he is my good traveling buddy. And that is just because of currency exchange. Our breakfast during the 3 weeks we've been traveling have lowered 20% because of currency exchange rate from euros to dollars, which is like crazy to think of, right? Tariffs, we have spoken about that already. Global warming, I mean, for some, it is not something that they pay much attention to. I said that when America withdraw from the Paris Treaty, it leaves even bigger responsibility to the rest of us. And I don't think that's good. I don't think it's fair. but that's just the fact right now. The digital transformation, just want to give you a little example of how companies are taking that thing on themselves. Koenig and Bauer in Germany, they have 6,500 employees. And when they started the digital transformation journey 3 years ago, they started interviewing everybody in the company, from the janitors to the kitchen people to the people on the floor, to get everybody's opinion and view on the challenges of digital transformation. I don't know what you think about it, but to me that pays a lot of respect that it's not just a top-down decision to do that, because what is the digital transformation? I think that most people think of the digital transformation as, okay, we move to digital technology, we move to digital mindset and how we see processes and how things are moving forward. But think of this for a second. If we talk about the things we have above, lack of labor, if you have a company where you have, let's say, seniors and young people, and you have male, female, you have different skills, you have different backgrounds, the digital transformation is maybe more about how engaging the labor force. Because how can you get everybody involved in the process and understand how it moves forward? And therefore, when people talk about digital transformation, maybe it's more important to actually figure out how do you do that from an HR perspective rather than from a technology perspective, just as an example. Declining print volume and political and economic uncertainty, these things I think all of us are influenced by. And I think that is something where we have different approaches to them. Some of the things may not influence your life very much. Some of it may. I think also in North America you have refugees from war zones that you have to integrate into your labor force, and you need the labor, so you have an interest in doing so. But sometimes perspective is great, so I just want to show you a short film which is back from 1966, where some kids are asked about their view on the future.
Well, in the year 2000, I think I'll probably be the spaceship to the moon dictating robots to robots, or else I may be, I don't know, in charge of a robot court, judging some robots, or I may be at the funeral of a computer, or if something's gone wrong with their nuclear bombs, I may be sort of coming back from hunting in a cave.
I don't think there is going to be atomic warfare, but I think that there is going to be all this automation. People are going to be out of work and a great population, and I think something has to be done about it. If I wasn't a biologist, that's what I'd like to do something about the population problem. Try and sort of temper it somehow. I don't know how. People will be regarded more as statistics than as actual people.
People wouldn't be able to live in ordinary houses because that would take up too much room. It'd have to be in flats, piled on top of one another, like that. And the houses would be rather small, and everything would be cramped up, very cramped.
Animals as they have here, sheep and cows and livestock, but they'll be kept in batteries. They won't be allowed to graze on pastures. They'll be kept in buildings all together, all in one big building, and artificially reared, so they'll yield a larger, be bigger and give more food.
And the black people, won't be sort of separate. They'll be all mixed in with the white people. And, the poor people and rich people will become the same. Well, they will be poor and rich, but they won't sort of look down on each other.
I'm not looking forward to living in that year, about 50 years' time. I mean, the world seems to be in such a terrible state now, let alone in 50 years' time.
I just think that sometimes it's interesting to see things in perspective. And when I found this, I have used it in a couple of presentations. I hope you also in the back could see and hear what was said. Some of the things are actually what is happening today, right? And some of the things, if we had looked back, we might not wanted them, but it happened anyway. And the reason why, again, is trying to get a perspective, because we are going to talk more about the industry, but it is part of what's the world that we live in, and therefore I thought it was interesting, because think of this, when you invest in new technology, you have to look, if you look at depreciation times, you have to look 5, 8, 10, maybe even longer ahead. And if you look back and you see how many changes, nobody who would have thought about the COVID, no one would have been thinking about the high inflations we have seen. Nobody would have thought about the wars in Israel and Ukraine. Nobody would have seen all those kind of things. And all of it influences our investments, influences our lives. And that is the difficulty about moving forward. Because when you invest in something now, the investment is about how will the market develop and how will that investment turn out in order to be profitable, and that changes along with how the market is developing, right? And March, I promised you to talk about Drupa and exhibitions. It was in 260,000 guests at Drupa. And of course, Drupa still continues to be one of the major important trade shows of our industry. But the world is also changing. And the reason why I said from 260,000 to 2 question mark is because the first number that came out from Drupa was 170,000 people. And then just a few months later, when they divided it into the regions of where people came from, it turned down to 165,000. And still a lot of people, of course, right? But the thing that is, in my view, a little bit interesting, you register to go to Drupa, you pay to go to Drupa, you even get scanned when you're at Drupa. Why is it so difficult to actually come up with some precise number? And that is also because some of the discussions that we have raised is the customer acquisition cost. In 2016, Heidelberg said to the world that they spent 50 million euros on going to Drupa. And I can't help think about how much that is when it comes to a brand that is so known and that is so recognized throughout the world, that if you look at customer acquisition, how many brand new leads that never heard about Heidelberg were actually delivered for the 50 million euros, right? And could the money be spent differently? This photo of this Chinese businessman is an example that Drupa, there was a lot of Chinese exhibitors this year. It was the second largest country representation at Drupa this time. And there were literally CEOs from Chinese businesses that were sitting and crying because they could not, there were no customers, no business at all. Of course, there was a lot of people that had good shows and a lot of advantages of going there. And this photo here, and that leads to one of the things that we're going to talk about as well. I will come a little bit back on Drupa on some technologies in a second, but that photo is generated by ChatGPT, the latest model. And I just wanted to, because we cannot talk about things without AI. So that is the prompt I had for making the first image. And then you get a relatively low resolution image. So I used Topaz, which is also an AI tool, to, you can see to the far over there. You can see that these are like, if you upscale the image, if you were to do. But instead of upscaling, I just asked ChatGPT to close in and make a new render of it. You can see how things are developing right now. I know that in generative AI, there's a lot of things that can probably be even better than this. And you can say, why is that interesting part of the Drupa conversations? It's interesting because, again, the narrative about let's say the Chinese person, I don't have any photos of real Chinese businessmen sitting and crying because they don't have enough visitors. I'm just saying that now with these kind of tools, you can actually place whatever story in the face of you. And I don't know if it's right. You don't know if it's right. But if it's right, then you can basically fake reality out of this, right? while the day before Drupa, Martin Eyer, who is the CEO of Cloud Printer, he called me several times, and I was busy. I think that all media at Drupa was very busy. But he tried to get in touch with me because in Kharkiv, in Ukraine, they claim in Ukraine that it was the first time that the Russians were having a bombing attack directly to a printing company because they thought it was a drone factory below it. And 7 Heidelberg operators were killed in the attack. And I started this conversation talking about freedom of speech and democracy. And I said to my colleagues, it's a little bit hypocritical to talk about things if you don't dare to go and see things. So Martin Eyer, who lives in Ukraine, he's from the Netherlands, he took me on a wild ride, 2,500 kilometers drive from the Polish border through a country where you in the West have a country that looks like any place in the world, in a safe place. Saw a little bit more military vehicles on the streets, but the only thing that really started to pay attention to me was when we about 150 kilometers into the country came to a small village, and in that village everybody was in wheelchairs or with sticks. That was a hospital city for people that has lost a leg or an arm or 2 legs or both arms. And when you come to a city where the majority of the people are missing different parts of the body, you start to realize, I have never been in a war zone before. I've not been a soldier. I have not been exposed to anything as terrible as being close to a war. But then you start realizing that this is real. You get to outside Kiev, where the Russians, under influence of drugs, were killing people, close-up headshots, raping men and women and children. And it was very devastating to go through a city where you knew this happened just 3 months before. And still you see life returning and things like that. And when we got to Kharkiv, there was a military escort, and I was fully armored with helmets and bulletproof vests for walking 200 meters. Because one of the things that the Russians do is if they know the press is coming, they have snipers. So that is like one of the times in my life where I felt a little bit scared, to be honest. And when you walk into that printing company, the soldier that was my guide, he didn't leave my side for like any of the 2 hours there. And the Russians, how they're doing it was basically they sent a missile towards the bindery. And the moment it exploded, they have figured out that people would probably move into a certain alley in the street, and that the second hit there. And when you come to a printing company where they have a brand new, relatively new 10-color Heidelberg press, and you see it is totally covered by blasted glass because of the glass from the walls from these explosions, you understand that the people that was in there, and more than 20 people were injured. And when I was there in the summer, that was like 1.5 months later, there were still people in critical situations there. This was a printing company that was specialized in printing textbooks for schools in Ukraine. It was not very funny, to be honest. And that is, the reason why I tell you this story is because I'm not judging people's beliefs in any way, but I have, I would say, people that I normally trust and see as friends. They told me when I was driving back, again, it took 2.5 days. We were there for 2 hours, and that took 2.5 days to go forth and back. I was told by some American friends that it was CIA that was doing the bombing, that Ukrainians have never done anything right, and that it was like their own fault. And then you just think about that, okay, if that's a population's own fault, it's really some tough decisions some people have made, right? And I find it very difficult and very hard to believe, but apparently some people believe this. Let's move to something a little bit more funny, or I don't know, it is. Printing United last year. It was in Vegas, wasn't it? Yeah. And basically, what was really strange this time was the fact that you had a south hall and a north hall or east hall, I can't remember. And in one of the halls, you had like more of the large format kind of things. And in the other hall, it was more like the commercial print. And you know that Printing United was founded on the idea of having a under one roof or convergence exhibition. But because there was a rebuilding of the convention center, I don't think there was this natural flow between the two halls and became very separated. And to us, it was like the wide format or the large format kind of thing was really successful, and a lot of people watching all the new equipment, and there was a considerably bigger exhibition space. And the commercial side was, it was a little bit empty. What do you think, Joanne? A little bit empty in our place, right? Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if this is the idea of under one roof has played out. You know that that vendors like is doing their own events. You have the Inkjet Summit next week, D-Scoop in June. There was the Hunger Innovation Days before. I don't know if that is the future of trade shows, but we have been at a couple of trade shows as well where you see fewer people. I would say that to the credit of the exhibitors, I think that a lot of exhibitors do a lot of work to build exciting booths and present exciting technology, but there's not as many visitors as there was in the past, from what we see, at least in that part of the world. Because we covered PrintPack India as well just 2 months ago. It has 150,000 visitors now, and they expect more than 200,000 visitors in 2 years' time. And the reason why I think this is important to think of is that when we have, let's say, the markets that we are addressing in North America and Europe, let's say the first world countries, maybe too many vendors are not looking too much into third world right now. I think that some of the losses that we can see, whether it's tariffs or any other things, can be maybe caught up in these emerging markets. And going to India and see a market that is thriving is of course interesting. They have growth in all segments, from newspapers to books to commercial print to signage to all segments. And that is not what we see in the West, I can guarantee that. So this is an opportunity, but it's also a little bit of a threat, because I have a friend that said to me that most offset presses are developed based on the needs of Bavarian printing companies. I don't know if it's true, but I think it's interesting to think of, because if we're not developing the technology that can be interesting for people to consume in China, in India, in Brazil, Latin America, because they are too expensive or too automated or too whatever they are, the Chinese and the Indians, the Brazilian vendors will take over these markets. And that is what you see, because maybe 10 years ago, let's say the Indian technology was not really interesting in that relation. But today, companies like Bindwell, that is competing with both Horizon and Müller Martini, have some very capable equipment and a management that really wants to take that equipment into our part of the world. So maybe something that more vendors should look into. We covered ProPack in South Africa as well, and the same trends, more exhibitors from third countries, better equipment, more people coming to the shows than in the West, and interesting trends and things to be aware of. there's in the industry, there's a lot of interesting things. This is just an example. This is Christoph Gamper from Durst. They last week acquired Callas, and in the press release, they said they wanted to create an alternative to the Fiery platform after it was acquired by, was it Epson or brother Epson, right? And to make something that is independent. I, of course, asked the question, can it be independent when it's bought by another vendor? That's questionable. But it's interesting to see how things are moving between companies. The second smaller picture is something I wish more vendors, maybe they do, but it's not in the public, but Durst has created something called the Durst Kraftwerk, or the power plant. And basically that is a innovation hub for startups. And some of the startups will turn out to be new independent companies. So for example, they have one of the first spin-offs is DMC, the Durst Media Center, which is a media company. The second spin-off they're doing now is release of metal 3D printers with a very high resolution that is capable of making parts for the auto industry and for heavy industries. Really also interesting. This guy, his name is Christophe Clement, and he used, together with the other Christophe, they created a company many years ago called Direct Smile that was acquired by EFI. Maybe you remember in the good old 80s and 90s where you saw your name in the sand of a beach, or you saw your Coca-Cola bottle transformed into something. These two guys did that technology. And now they are ready to show something called Printess. And I just want to show you if I can figure out how to do this. So, they have basically created a service that is, I wouldn't say a rip-off of InDesign, but a little bit like a copy of InDesign. So you basically say that I would like to make a leaflet using AI. And I know that a lot of you will say that, oh yeah, we've seen that before, but just hang on for a second. So company name could be Joe's Garage. And then the type of business could be blacksmith. Is that correctly spelled? And then value proposition, we make it harder. And you can say that I would like to have that in French. And then it creates an artwork. And this is a layered design. So it means everything is editable. So you can basically, when you see it's not an image, it doesn't generate an image, it generates a InDesign-alike file. And that basically means that, again, in this creator economy that we are part of now, the Canva, you see you have different color themes. And then it just starts to give you, oh, that is so good. I'm losing it, thank you. So now you can see it delivers a wealth of examples. And if you click on it, you can basically see that now all the elements are available for being edited. And I mean, this is just an example of what is going on right now. And maybe you don't think it's interesting. I was a little bit, I wouldn't say blown away because you have seen similar things, but everything is rendered here. So the images are rendered, the design is rendered, the text is AI generated, everything is, and this they have on their website as a demo, they have posters and postcard, but you can do a multi-pages magazine if you want to do this way now. And the business model they operate is, as far as I remember, it doesn't cost you anything to go into the shop, and then you pay what refers to like a click price to use it. So dynamic pricing on it. So this is two guys and their company that is very interesting following now. Princess is the name, it's a German, really funny guys at the same time, by the way. Talking about a little bit about things that is not here anymore. At Printing United and also at iGas in Japan, the Revoria GC 12500 was introduced as Fujifilm's B2 toner-based printer. And that has now officially been withdrawn because they want to make it better before they re-release it. So, an example. But things are changing a lot. So also see that Scott Mackey, that used to run the global business division of Fujifilm, is out. Seems that Fujifilm is centralizing some of the decisions and powers to Japanese. So Toshi Kino, that ran the Americans, is now from April back in Japan as a global marketing manager. Manuel Schrodt in Germany. And then Andrew Gunn, that you know, he is also Canadian. He was with Xerox, very smart guy. He is now also part of the team in the leadership of marketing of Fujifilm. So what is this? You know what it is? Oh, it's a difficult one, right? The image to your left is from the new Fujifilm CFG 1650 inkjet press. And that over there is called the Fireflies from the Ricoh VC 80000. And it both shows two examples of something that is the main headache of inkjet right now, and that is how to get rid of water. So it's the drying units. So the Firefly from Ricoh is basically the approach they have is a lot of small tubes with heat inside them to make sure that the paper path is not destroying the paper as much as if you have, according to them, larger drums. Fujifilm, they have made something that is entirely new. So this is a heating device that is just after the roll of paper. And the idea is basically that it takes out all the relatively humidity of the paper before they even start printing on it. So that basically means when they print, they don't need a primer. They don't need anything. And when that is then printed on, the only water that needs to be evaporated is the water that is in the ink. Pretty smart idea, and they say that they were surprised themselves about this. And I just think it illustrates, because when you look at all these fantastic devices, they are actually in positions in the market where they can start replacing offset. Chica and I, we were with Zumbil, a packaging company in America, just a few weeks ago, filming a HP T470, a white page digital printer. And it was, just to put it in perspective, they have 3 flexo presses, they have 2 VLF offset presses, and the T470. And they said they probably bought the last offset machine now, because the T470 is so productive, so fast, so high quality, that it can actually replace an offset machine in packaging. I would have thought that was a little bit further down the road, to be honest, but that is what a real customer is saying. Then to a story that is a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit sad, and also great, because it's a development. Here is Michel and Stefan Hunkler and Franz Hunkler, Daniel Ernie, the Müller-Martinis, because 2 years or 1.5 years ago, Müller-Martini acquired Hunkler, as you may know. And the reason I put this into this story is because I have standard finishing that you may know, of course, because with Müller-Martini's own operation in North America, there was no need for having standard as a partner. So in 26, all the Hunkler distribution will be handled by Møller Martini and not by Standard Finishing anymore. And that is, of course, a quite big thing because Standard Finishing has been focusing on Horizon and on Hunkler. And the reason why I think it's a sad story was that Chica and I at Printing United, we interviewed all four companies individually. And it is sad because they have so many values that are so aligned. They are so nice people, and the way they talk about each other was just like, why can't they just merge all of them, right? But of course, that is a different story. And what happens when the market dynamics changes, a guy like this jumps into the scene. This is Stefano Di Marco from Tecnow in Italy, biggest competitor to EMT in the US and to Hunkler in Switzerland. And the reason, two reasons here, they acquired Sigma, which is a large manufacturer of logistics and packaging lines. But that lights out photo over there, it was impossible to believe that Tecnow would attend a Horizon show in Japan 2 years ago, but now they are partnered with Horizon. So that creates these new dynamics in the market. And talking about dynamics in the market, my friend, and he has not left what they think, he's been fired from what they think. Right, Eric? Yeah. Again, an example of some of the dynamics that we see in the market, that things are changing. I didn't ask for your permission. I hope it's okay. Okay, sorry for the red X, but otherwise it's a true story, right? So what I think a lot of people were expecting to be something that could drive, let's say, both APTech as an organization and what they think as a media forward. I think that dynamic has changed because I think that after Eric has been kicked out, I think that what they think are trying to find their feet again, and that has maybe taken a little bit long time in my view. People that also left the building, I mentioned Shlomo from Hicon. The guy in the middle is a very sad story. That is Ben Levitz from, Chica, help me. Yeah. A fabulous company in Minneapolis doing 6, 7, 8 colors foil prints in the highest quality you can even imagine. All the people working there were our artists, went out of business last year. And then, of course, Heidelberg changed management again. So again, the dynamics in the market is quite interesting. Again, a media story, Mark Michelson left. And it's kind of interesting because Mark has been the editor of printing impressions for 43 years, and then taken over by Ashley Roberts, but she's not an editor in her LinkedIn profile, she's a content director. And then again, if you think back of what I started with, this is also, again, if you're a content director, does it mean that you have the editorial integrity that you need to have? I think she has, so there's no question about it. I'm just saying that it's funny how words are changing things all the time. And have you seen this one? This is, I also want to show you something here with that, because this is, they have this top 300 every year, where they basically rank US companies after revenue. And every year, I always say to them, we know that Aaron Donnelly is on the top, and who gives a shit about it, right? We cannot compete with them anyway, right? But what is interesting when you actually take in the data and then you sort it and you decide to see if I can find my mouse here, and you decide to look at productivity per employee instead, then you get a totally different, because the productivity is something that you can use for yourself. You can take your revenue, divide it with how many full-time employees you have, and then you can see basically your competitive span. You can see how much money can you spend on equipment, on people, on marketing, in order to be competitive to your nearest neighbor. And that is something that I think, again, if you show data in no context, It really does matter. And just to put in perspective, R. Donnelley, when you do that on productivity on a top 300 list, they become number 263. So they have way to go before they are even close to the best in the industry. In Canada, according to Google, you have a declining market of 7.3 between 2020 and 2025. And let's talk about that in a second, because I asked ChatGPT what are the 10 most interesting trends if we look at the industry. And if you look at number 4, it says pricing is broken. And I take the liberty to say that nobody else but we are talking about it basically. Let me give you an example. This guy, his name is Dr. Paul, I can't remember his last name right now, from Deutsche BVDM in Germany, Bundesdeutsche Verband Media. And I was so lucky that I was having a presentation after him in Berlin last year. And he was talking about Heidelberg is not selling as many machines as they normally do. The tonnage of paper coming into Germany is really declining. The number of people working in the printing industry is declining. And I was just thinking, okay, we can just close now. Let's go home. There's no reason to do this. But I'm a little bit more optimistic than he is, because does that really matter? How many printing presses you have in the market or the vendors sell, or does it really matter how much paper you bring into the market? I think that what really matters is how much money you as PSPs make. And if we believe in capitalism, and we have for the past 20 years talked about an overcapacity in the market, it is good that we have a market that is adjusting, because that means more work, better prices for the PSPs that are back. And if you have 1,000 sheets that are sold 20, 30, 40% more expensive than you did last year, that is not bad. Then the volume is not important. It is the value of what you print that is important. And of course, digital plays a role. Tactful with your work on embellishment plays a huge role in this as well. A lot of things that plays a role in actually making sure that you make more money on the things that you're doing, right? And that leads, of course, to the thing about pricing. How many here are from a printing company? The people here that are working in printing companies, are you using full cost models for your pricing? So how you price your products? How do you price your products? Hourly costing, so that is a full cost model, yeah. How much do you think this costs to produce? I don't know if you have them in Canada, but this is the smallest Volkswagen you can get. In Europe, it sells retail for around 12,000, 15,000 euros, right? It costs 2,000 to produce. So did they figure out to sell it for 12,000, 15,000 by looking at material cost and labor directly involved with the car? They probably looked at what the market and the competition could handle, right? And that is the thing. If you look at the customers we have as an industry, when you look at a packaging product, the box that we deliver, does it reflect how much it actually costs to produce, or can we actually price it for at least something that looks like what value it brings to the customer? It is difficult to change. But if we don't do it, if we don't make sure that we can actually make more money on the products that are standing out, then everything will be commoditized. And if everything is commoditized, it's a race to the bottom. It's a democratization of pricing. That means that it is the variable cost that will be the thing. And therefore, it is important that we have to start thinking about new pricing models and how we do things. And all the MIS systems in the world so far are not doing us very well, because they are basically just giving us an idea on how much it costs to produce under some circumstances that we don't even know about. Because What do you have? Flexo machines? So what is the utilization of your machine? Utilization. Spend them 30% or 70% or?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty high. I run it 2 shifts.
2 shifts is not high. 2 shifts is not high. Can we agree on that? No, just kidding. No, but I mean, think of this for a second. If you have, if you have a machine, whether it's analog or digital, and you have a depreciation of a machine over 8 years' time, it costs exactly the same when it is standing still as when it operates, besides the variable cost. So if we have a full cost model that takes into consideration that we're only utilizing the machine 50%, then we have a minimum 50% overhead that can be used for making more money. And that is, of course, interesting to think of, because you have, I think in macroeconomy, it's called the industrial leap you have is basic. You can expand your business 20, 30, 40%, probably without adding new equipment. You may need to add more labor, but not more equipment, right? And that is why this is interesting to understand, that in other industries, that pricing mechanism has changed many years ago. And I know, of course, that some of you are doing that. And if you look at a lot of the online printing companies, they must change the pricing categories, because they can just go to Vistaprint and to the nearest competitor and see how much does this cost, and that will be the pricing range they have. And now they can pay backwards and see what equipment do we need to have in order to be as profitable as possible. But if you're a normal, let's say, packaging or commercial printing company, it goes the other way. You have to figure out how you can have a value-added sale to your product. And that was why I thought that, okay, how much is the car worth? That is a different question, right? Because one thing is, if it costs 2,000 euros to produce, how valuable is it? Yeah, if you don't have a driver's license, it's not much worth to anybody, right? But if you need to drive, let's say, just in the city and need a small car, well, it might have a very high value to you. If you are driving across the country every week, maybe you want something a little bit bigger, right? So this is, again, the same product is priced differently. A great example of that is also that if you look at postal products, if you look at the mailman, he's doing the same job. He's taking something out of his bag and putting it into your mailbox. But the pricing is different, whether it's a statement or it's a magazine or it's a recommended letter or whatever it is. So the same service can have different prices. And that's also a little bit interesting to think of. This is me. This is the last photo I have of my family, because I've not seen them in 3 weeks. Chica and I, we travel the world all the time. And the things I have been talking about today is what I see from the industry. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of opportunities. I think there's a lot of learnings from each other. I think that is one of the things that we like the most is we don't like traveling very much, but we like to meet with people and learn and share. And I think that is one of the perks of our industry is that this is a very open industry compared to many. I think that we are very open in discussing things. I remember like maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, nobody wanted to talk about the equipment they had in the printing company because that was the secret sauce. I think that people have realized that the secret sauce is between your ears. And that leads to a little funny observation. The Swedish Federation of Printers, they made a huge survey along with a company where they wanted to find out what segment in the industry makes the most money, or which segment is the most valuable. And it made a simple index where the index was an index based on the relation between investments in technology and investment in people. And basically it showed that at that time, large format printers and print brokers were the two highest ranking segments of the industry that made the most money, and that the commercial print was among the lowest value creating based on this equation. And then 2 years later, they thought it could be interesting because people use the same paper, they have the same labor, they have the same technology. What is the differentiator? And the differentiator in what they realized was in the leadership. And that is maybe a good way of hopefully ending this presentation, because I think and hope that everybody can say that, okay, go back to your companies, whether it's an OEM or it's a PSP, that start to think about where you want to be in the next period of time, and you can define it yourself. And then when you've done that, maybe some new ideas pop up. This is the last stat from where we have traveled. So we just, in 4 years, passed 645,000 kilometers. The really sad thing about this is that we spent 41 days in an airplane, in a plane. So that is, of course, the worst thing about it. But I hope you could use this for something, and if there's any questions, please shoot.